Steve, I know that Phusis has been really involved with some companies as they've been looking to implement global computer systems. Can you just give us some insights into the way you've helped them with their data management around that process?
Sure, it's absolutely true. A lot of corporations have been working very hard to standardise their business processes across their entire enterprise and to automate them, ideally with a single computer system, because that brings great simplicity to the operation. One of the areas that's caused them problems historically has again been master data. So we've seen many clients who've spent a lot of money and a lot of effort. They've got standard processes running, they've got a single instance of something like SAP in place, but they've still got 4,000 people globally just banging in data exactly when they feel like it, exactly when they need it. So they end up with an excellent computer system running standard processes with very poor quality data. And ultimately, that undermines the return on investment of the whole activity. These global computer system transformation programs are a great opportunity to implement MDM discipline at the same time. So not only do we have standard automated business processes, but we have the MDM processes sitting alongside those that work correctly as well. So when we come to the rollout, everything rolls out together. So when the new system goes in, instead of giving everybody access to, say, the vendor creation dialogue, you simply say, no, that's all managed through shared services now. Everybody can simply request a new vendor, and it goes through the properly governed data management process before that gets landed. So in that example, you can't just create a vendor because you happen to have agreed locally you're going to do some work with them. It has to go through the proper due diligence. And of course it integrates with the mainstream business processes, such as the procurement due diligence. Is this a supplier we're prepared to do business with? So certainly, I would strongly recommend that anybody who's running a global transformation program with a strong systems element, they should be running an MDM workstream as well.
What are the dangers that they face maybe if they don't do that? What hazards are they going to come across later on down the line?
Well, they won't see the problem to start with. That's quite interesting, because generally speaking, the scope of the implementation project will take all of the old data and probably do some scrubbing and integration. So when they start with the new system and the new business processes, the data will probably be in pretty good shape. The issue is that the old business behaviours still occur, so the quality of that data will degrade quite quickly. So 6 to 9 months later, you're going to have a situation where your data is back where it was before you started, and then the old business problems will start to surface. And often people won't necessarily realise this is where the problem's coming from, and they'll be saying, well, the new processes aren't valid, or this new system we've spent all this money on was a complete waste of time. And that's not actually the problem. So you tend to find that the project gets the medal, and then 9 months later, the mainstream business as usual business start to feel the pain again. And that's the thing that we're trying to avoid.
And what I'm really hearing from you is that you're as much interested in changing behaviours and fundamental processes within an organisation as just looking at what they do with their data and what the data is doing for them.
That's completely central. This is about instantiating new business processes, behaviours, ways of thinking, where the content of the data is quite central to the operation. And so therefore you don't have to worry about data quality as something that somehow happens outside of your day-to-day business. It's just simply there, and it happens when it needs to happen. So absolutely, with things like data standards, with things like separate MDM processes, with things like proper authorizations and governance, and with things like shared service execution, those are the new elements of the business that you need to put in place to do MDM successfully.
And how easy do you find it to really change these behaviours at a fundamental level?
I think business people are generally frustrated at the quality of data and the problems that that causes that they then subsequently have to deal with. I won't say it's the easiest thing in the world to convince someone. I mean, I do say to people, I often get a classic pushback would be, so what you're telling me, Miriam, is that instead of what I used to do, which is type the data in, now I've got to type the data into a request anyway, but then it goes somewhere else and someone types it in again. How can that possibly be beneficial? And in one sense, there isn't really a defence to that. But the reality is that that request that you make will go through a governance process and it will be assessed and authorised. So therefore, there is a value add to that extended process. So in other words, if I used to just pile in and create a vendor, now there'll be a check to see whether that vendor already exists. And if it already does, you'll be told you don't need to create that data, you use this piece of data that's already there. So therefore, it stops the duplicate entries, the poor quality, the incomplete records because I only need the first 3 or 4 bits of the data, I don't need to do the whole thing. So it can be counterintuitive to individuals working at the coalface, and you really have to you have to do the communications around the bigger picture and bring them on board that way.
So rigour and discipline lead to enhanced efficiencies and ultimately better commercial operations.
Absolutely, but also perhaps to slightly more work at the coalface on an individual item on an individual day.
If you're new to this series and perhaps about to embark on a big SAP or globalisation programme, then do sign up for the rest of the series to get all of Steve's insights. Just press that button on the screen now. And don't forget, you've got all of the contact details there too if you've got any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share.